So if you couldn't tell by now, I'm a little bit of a gear nerd, just a little bit. Obsessed with learning about guitars, specs, amps, the history behind different components. I really like nerding out, and so I am always known as the resident gear whore of the group. Especially at the music school that I teach at, I'm kind of known as the gear guy. Anytime someone has a question about like, oh, what guitar, amp, pedals, modeler, what should I get into? I'm usually the go-to guy for questions on that kind of stuff. And the other day, my coworker Connor came up to me and he was like, yo, Evan, I'm thinking about getting into the world of modeling. What's your take on them? Let me know all about them. And I was like, that might be a good idea for a video. Get talking about modelers, get your guys' opinions, get my opinions, and just kind of get the dialogue going on modelers versus amps, but in a constructive way. So a little bit of background, I have a ton of experience with modeling amps. I first owned an original Axe-Fx way back in the day, like I think like 2006 or 7, I forget the year that they came out. But I remember the year when they came out, one of my good buddies, Mike, he came up to me and he was just like, yo, have you checked this box out? It does everything, like everything. And I just instantly dove in, looked into it, and I was just so stoked on what the future held for modeling technology. Flash forward about a year later after saving up a bunch of money, and I finally was able to buy an Axe-Fx Ultra. Now the Ultra was a really great unit, getting some really killer compelling tones, and I owned that unit for honestly like almost a decade, from like 2008 up until like probably a couple of years ago when I finally sold it when I got my Line 6 Helix to replace it. I've used the Axe-Fx Ultra, the 2, the 3, I had a Kemper on loan for a little while, and when I was at NAMM 2020, which, just thinking about being at NAMM in 2020, that's painful. I actually got to use one of the Neural DSP Quad Cortex's pre-production units for like 5 minutes, and I also have a good amount of experience using their plugins as well. So I'm pretty versed as far as all of the current on-the-scene modelers are concerned. And the dirty truth is, they're all great. But the really big thing between all of them is the workflow and how you go about actually dialing in your sound. See, with the Axe-Fx, it's always been like a super nerdy modeler to get into. You have to really dive into the weeds on all these specs and technical numbers and adjusting all these internal parameters to get your amp just right. And it could take weeks to get your sound finally sitting where you want. And ooh man, when those 2 weeks or so are up and your tone is finally crafted, is just like the most perfectly constructed sound. It cuts through the mix, it sings, it sustains, it just has that characteristic about it that is just so awesome. But you also have to spend weeks on end diving through the weeds in order to get there. And that can be so painfully frustrating for some people. And that's honestly the main reason why I switched over to the Helix. It's not because I think the Helix sounds better than the Axe-Fx or like which one's the best. It's honestly just down to the workflow of the units. See, with the Line 6, it's probably the most close to just grabbing an amp, grabbing a couple of pedals, putting it in a signal chain, and getting off to the races with minimal faffing about, which is why I really like it. Because I have a tendency to bounce around from project to project, doing like a cover here, cover there, sending some tracks to this buddy for this project, sending some stuff over here. And so I really need to be able to grab and craft tones on the fly and in a hurry, because if I have to spend 2 weeks getting the perfect tone dialed in, well, that might be a week that I don't have to get that tone up and running. Being able to get a quick, easy tone that sounds pretty dang good on the mix, that was my ultimate concern, and for me, Line 6 solved that problem. But instead of just barking at you about it, let me show you what I mean. Let's hop over into some software and dial up a quick tone. Oh, what's up, dog? This is Preston, by the way, in case you're new to the channel. This is my dog. This is Preston. Say hi. What's up, dude? So now we're all plugged in, super easy signal chain. I got my Music Man Luke 3 BFR, Mogami cable going straight into the Line 6 Helix, going out of that into a Focusrite 2i2 and into Logic. No background compression, EQ or anything going on. This is just raw signal from the amp. And with everything pulled out of the signal chain, just the raw guitar sounds like this. pretty uninspiring. It's just a straight guitar tone. So let's go in here and add something to our signal chain. And like I said, I am all about pulling up tones quickly and efficiently. So I'm just gonna go into the amp and cab section. I'm not even gonna choose an individual cab. And I am going to look for the US Deluxe Normal, and I already know just from experience I need to turn this drive down, get the channel volume up because it is a non-master volume amp, so we want that power section just wide open and using the drive to control things. I like it a little bit mid-scoop to kind of get that more authentic Fender sound, a little bit treble, a little bit of bass, and let's see where that lines up. Little extra drive. So already like pretty decent tone, and that's just pulling up the deluxe reverb with a little bit of messing around with the EQ. Boom. So what's a deluxe reverb without a little bit of reverb? So let's just head over here into the back section, go to our reverb. I personally like the Legacy 63 Spring. Just turn the decay down a little bit, but then it just instantly has that deluxe reverb sound. It's like already dripping and sounding good, and it's been like, what, 30 seconds? So let's go over into a dynamic section real quick, and let's get a tried and true red squeeze. Now the really cool thing about the red squeeze in this is that it has a mix control. I'm personally a huge fan of the Dynacomp. I think it's just like one of the most classic country, you know, Americana sounding comps out on the market, but it can just be way too much at a time. So I'm gonna turn the sensitivity down a little bit and the mix down a little bit, and let's just kind of see where that leads us. Ooh, that sounded really good. Really good. Let's take that dynamics off and let's get a little distortion going on here. So let's just swing down, get a tried and true 808 going on. I'm not even gonna adjust this, and let's see how it sounds. And it's like, that was like, what, 2 minutes? And it's like, I know that's not the world's greatest sounding tone in the world, but all that this took was a couple of button presses, a little bit of fiddling, and it's like already we got a tone going. So it's like, let's try putting that compressor back on, adding a super simple delay. Let's get that into quarter notes, turn the mix down a little bit, and it's like already got like some like spacey jams going on, using a little boost from the Luke here. Also, side note, one thing that I love about the Luke, this little boost knob that it has on the volume pot, which is a push-push, which is awesome. Gives you like 20 dB of boost right off the bat, which is super killer. And that's just a super quick demonstration of just pulling up a tone and just seeing how the workflow is like. If you guys are interested in seeing a little bit more about some of the deep dive that I have to say on the Helix and some of how I like to do my signal flow and routing, let me know down below in the comments. Now, I really don't want this to start any sort of like a flame war between the different modeling companies, because like I say, Everything is really, really good these days. You can get really compelling tones with really great feels. I really do think it all boils down to what kind of a workflow you're looking for. If you're kind of a nerdy computer science kind of a person, going with something like an Axe effect so you can really get into the weeds with all these technical numbers and learning about like the logarithmic curves of these knobs and all that, it's like, that's gonna be your jam and you're gonna love getting your tones dialed in. If you have a super sweet tube amp collection sitting around at home and you're afraid to bring it out on the road or going to different studios with it, something like a Kemper so you can profile all those amps and bring them with you anywhere in the world is gonna be super valuable to you. Or if you're someone like me and primarily your background is using amps and pedals and that kind of a thing, something like the Line 6, and particularly the Line 6 floor unit, is amazing because it really does do the best job of replicating the experience of just having like an amp and a pedal board. And I think for some people who primarily use backlines a lot of the time, something like the Line 6 is so easy to just quickly move pedals around on the fly if you're using like backline amps and you don't know if you're going to show up and get like an AC15, AC30, or like a DeVille or a Deluxe or something like that. It can be so valuable if you don't know where your backline's going to be coming from. Thank you so much for watching this quickie. If you found it helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're starting to look into what kind of a modeler you should be getting, let me know down below in the comments with what kind of a workflow you're looking for, and I might be able to throw out some recommendations in which way you might be leaning. Also, if you are interested in some more Helix content, let me know. I'd love to show you some of my more in-depth workflow with getting some of my tones and some of the tricks that I've learned for sort of milking the most of the DSP from the internal chips out of that. And yeah, until next time, cheers.